With that, anybody that is going to testify tonight in this matter, I have to swear you in. You have to be signed up if you're going to testify, and you also have to tell the truth. So if you'll just raise your hand and say that everything that you have to say will be the truth, the best you know it. Okay. Opening comments. Official record of this proceeding are going to be the minutes taken by the secretary. We do have a court reporter here tonight, so they can check each other, I guess.
Mr. Thompson, I just have one question. Do you have a notary, are you licensed or authorized by the state of Ohio to administer oaths?
I'm not a notary public.
I wonder if we should have the court reporter swear that all the witnesses and just to be official. Would you mind doing that?
Well,
I think our prosecutor's office has always indicated we can swear them, and that's what we've done previously.
Okay.
Do you agree with that, Kristen?
I don't know what past advice is, but I've never had that issue
Okay.
be raised.
I just don't want an issue raised that the testimony is somehow tainted because Mr. Thompson, with all due respect, I'm not trying to
No,
be
that's fine,
difficult,
no.
didn't have the authority to administer the oath.
Say however the board wants to proceed.
well, maybe I can clear this up. Let me read the opening statement, and this will tell you how the system works here.
Perfect.
I don't know if you're familiar with this,
I'm
but,
not.
okay. Excuse me a second. The BZA is a quasi-judicial body, and as such, its role is similar to a judge in a court case. The board will hear evidence and testimony that is factual and will make decisions based upon the facts which are presented. The rules are set forth in the resolution and the principles of law. The Ohio Revised Code, section 519.13, requires that any township that has adopted a zoning resolution, which Auburn Township has, appoints a 5-member board of zoning appeals and 2 alternates. The board is empowered to hear and decide appeals to authorize variances from the strict terms of the zoning resolution where the variance will not be contrary to the public interest and where, due to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the resolution will result in an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulties. The BZA is also permitted to authorize variances where the spirit and the intent of the zoning is upheld and substantial justice will be done. With this being stated, the board's proceedings are relatively informal, but in order to conduct an orderly meeting and allow all parties of interest, mainly the contiguous property owners or their legal representatives, the opportunity to present the evidence, certain procedures need to be followed. All interested parties must be sworn in. The applicant will be asked to present evidence to support the requested appeal. The board will ask questions and then all interested parties, so being the contiguous property owners, may present evidence concerning the appeal and ask questions regarding the previously presented evidence. It is the applicant's burden to produce the evidence to support the application. The board will not make the applicant's case for them. In order to prepare an appropriate meeting minutes, each person who speaks will need to state for the record his or her full name and address. The meeting may be continued by either the applicant or the board. The board must base their decisions upon facts and not on expressions of concerns or non-factual matters. The action of the BZA does not become final until 30 days after the date of the meeting that the minutes were approved. Okay. So, with that, there is no old business. The new business tonight is BZA-19-12-DI, an appeal alleging error by the zoning inspector in his determination of an accessory use to a main use, single-family dwelling located at 11365 Normandy Lane, Auburn Township, Ohio 44023, in an R2 zoning district. The accessory use, parentheses, bed and breakfast, hotel/motel, is not a listed use. Therefore, it is not permitted in the R2 zoning district. Prohibited uses, 4.03C, any not specifically listed shall not, any use not specifically listed shall not be permitted. With that, present your case.
Did his reading of our structure answer your question about?
Well, I still would, my preference would be to have the court reporter swear in each witness before they testify to where that may be, it take 2 seconds.
I don't have a problem with that.
I don't know that we've got to jump through hoops to satisfy somebody's,
Well, he thinks like an attorney, and he might be right.
well,
I don't know.
we've never done this before, we've been doing this for a long time. We have other committees that do the same type of thing, so, do what you want, Chairman, but I just think we're wasting a lot of time tonight.
Well, the time will be about 3 seconds per witness.
If you allow her to administer the oath, it would alleviate them being able to raise that
Exactly.
issue
That's no
down the
problem.
line.
You can go ahead and do that.
Okay.
If somebody comes up to testify, she can swear them in, if she's a notary.
Of course she is.
Sure she is.
Okay.
Yes. Well, essentially, the error that we have raised in this case has not necessarily been presented in the appeal documents presented by former counsel. But for the record, my name is Chuck Longo, and I do represent the homeowner that has been cited by the zoning inspector with the violation that brings us here today. The definitions of a bed and breakfast and hotel / motel do not apply to this case. So whether or not my client has rented her home out, which would be the entire home for a period of time, is not precluded by any of the Auburn resolutions. The Auburn resolutions don't prohibit the leasing or renting of a home for any period of time, whether it's a day, a week, a month, 2 years, 10 years, whatever the case may be. So when you consider the definitions of hotel motel and the definition of bed and breakfast, and I'll be glad to call the building inspector as my first witness, I believe that the zoning commission doesn't have any alternative but to dismiss and eliminate the charge that has been brought against my client, Sandy Moore.
Well, I don't know, what little bit of I've read of our zoning, it's pretty damn clear that she's not allowed to do what she's doing where her house is at. Our zoning is very specific as to the uses. And the reason we have zoning in the township is to protect people that buy in a place that this neighborhood's gonna stay the way it is because our zoning is enforced properly. If you feel that Frank made an error, Frank, do you want to explain what your logic was?
Well, my logic is pretty simple. First of all, it's a single family dwelling.
Could we swear him in?
Pardon me?
Could we swear? the
Oh,
zoning
you
inspector?
want to swear him in, please?
Push your right hand. Do you swear the testimony in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Okay. As you stated, it's in the R2 zoning district, which is single-family dwellings. My interpretation of the single-family dwelling is just that, a family living in a house. Now, if you want to rent your house, that's fine, as long as the person that is renting it establishes residence, receives its mail, and so forth. That is not the case in this case. Secondly, we had a complaint, we investigated the complaint, and subsequently found this advertised as a bed and breakfast on the website. So how can you say it's not a bed and breakfast if you advertise it as a bed and breakfast? Plain and simple. Thirdly, we sent a letter, no response. Sent a certified letter, no response. So, I mean, that's why we're here tonight, because this office was never even granted a courtesy of a response to explain what is happening. In the meantime, several other neighbors have now come forward. There's 10, 6, 12 cars on a cul-de-sac. What's going on? Well, I can't answer that, call the sheriff, you know, but, you know, and then we find out that, you know, like I said, we find out it's being advertised on the website as a bed and breakfast, you know, and we've read some other reviews and everything. And my feeling is if you wanna do that, build the structure accordingly, go to the building department, have it built to commercial code, have the fire department come and inspect to make sure that the safety and everything, and none of that, to our knowledge, has been done. We've checked with the building department, we've checked with the fire department, the fire chief is here to testify as well. So that's, you know, my logic, it fits under this hotel, motel, bed and breakfast definition as far as I'm concerned, you know, and that's how I see it.
That's his job, to interpret our zoning. We have one commission that writes it.
Right.
We have another one, he's the one that interprets it. If somebody has a problem, of course, that's what we're here for.
And that's why I'm.
But everything he said is pretty true. Can I ask the chief to see what he had to think about the safety of the bed?
Well, before you get that, I mean, whatever your agenda is, I'll do whatever. I mean, I can wait and ask questions of the chief afterwards, whatever you.
Well, you know, he referred that it has to be built to commercial standards, and there should be, if it's gonna be a hotel motel or a bed and breakfast, that you're gonna be serving breakfasts and to many people, it's like a restaurant. So basically,
I'll wait and let him ask the questions, so we'll
Okay.
get toward the end here.
all right,
Okay, I do have some questions. So sir, your last name's Mr.
Kitco.
Kitco, okay. So if the advertisement was for a bed and bath, that'd be different than a bed and breakfast, right?
I don't know, never thought about it that way. You know,
Well, if
I'd have to research it, but
Right, well, if the advertisement that you're referencing on the website was actually for a bed and bath, it wouldn't be a bed and breakfast. You agree with me, hypothetically speaking, correct?
yeah, I guess you could play on words, but yeah.
Okay, so the issue that we've got here has nothing to do with parking on the street, correct?
No, that's part of the reason or that's subsequently what happened in our
Right, but-
investigation, and some other people came forward asking, you know, why are these cars, normally I wouldn't have an answer, but because we had already started the investigation, we had an answer. you know.
Well, the fact that cars are parked on the street has nothing to do with the zoning violation, correct?
No,
You agree with me, right?
yeah, correct.
So if this dwelling, you agree with me,
Excuse me 1 second. I don't know if that's totally correct, because health and safety is part of our zoning resolution.
could I get through my questions?
Well, wait a minute, you made a point that isn't correct, because health and safety is part of our zoning amendment, and cars on this cul-de-sac stop fire trucks from getting to an emergency because they're parked on a cul-de-sac where they should be.
Well,
Can I ask a question, please?
Well,
can I get done with my cross-examination?
when he gets done,
Thank you.
you're next.
Thank you.
The point being is, we're not on notice of any issue relating to parked cars in the street, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you'd agree with me that if, let me back up. You'd agree with me that the Mara residence is considered a dwelling under the
Correct.
definition of the
Correct.
Auburn resolutions, correct?
Correct.
Now, when we consider the hotel motel accessory use that you're claiming exists in this case, we have to look at the definition under the Auburn resolutions to determine what a hotel motel is, correct?
Correct.
Excuse me for just 1 minute. Are you suggesting that the hotel motel provision in the resolution is specific to accessory uses? You're not making that suggestion, are you?
No,
Okay.
not a permitted accessory use.
Well, in order for it to be considered used as a hotel motel, it would meet the definition, right?
I disagree.
Well, good, I'm glad you disagree, I'm asking Mr. Kipco here.
Go ahead now, state your question again.
Right, you're claiming that it's being used in an impermissible way, the dwelling, as
Yes.
a hotel motel, correct?
Correct.
And in order for that to happen, you would agree with me that the use must meet the definition of a hotel motel, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if we take a look at, are you familiar with the definitions of hotel motel?
In the resolution, I got it right in front of me.
You do, okay, could you read that further? Correct.
A building which is temporary lodging is provided and offered to the public for compensation. The lodging establishment is permitted as a conditional use in the B2 or B3 zoning district.
Okay, so in order for it to be a hotel or motel, or considered to be used as a hotel motel, it would have to be a building, correct? You see where it says that?
Structure, building,
No, it
yes.
says building. Do you see where it says building?
Yeah,
And that would be the first issue, right? Is the structure that we're discussing considered a building, correct?
all structures are, the dwellings are structures or buildings.
Okay, well, you know that there's a definition of dwelling in the resolutions too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Dwelling's different than building, correct?
Not in my interpretation, no.
Well, under the Auburn resolutions interpretation, it's certainly
But
different.
what
right?
is the definition of a building?
Why don't you take a look at the resolution?
I don't have the whole resolution.
Okay,
I do.
Here, you can swear me in and I'll read it.
Wait, I'm gonna get to that, if I could.
Mr. Longo, I'm gonna ask a question, because this isn't a court. Are you inferring that because people have been allowed to stay there, that it meets the criteria to be
No.
a hotel motel?
Okay, I'll get to that in
It
a
is
second.
definitely not in the correct zoning area for
Or
a
whatever,
hotel motel.
it's not being used as a hotel motel.
Are the markers here?
So here,
No,
could you take a look at building?
I got it, I just got it.
Okay, could you read the definition of a building?
did you want it?
A
Are you
temporary-
reading? No.
A temporary or permanent structure other than a mobile home, a fixed or existing on the ground as, and designated as and intended for the support, enclosure, shelter, or protection of persons, animals, shelter, cattle, or property.
Okay, so you'd agree with me that the Mara home is not a building, it's a dwelling under the resolutions, correct?
How do you figure that? It says a temporary or permanent structure other than a mobile home.
Sir, Mr. Thompson, it appears that you've already made your decision on the comments that you're making, which is fine. I'd just like to make a record. So, sir, would you answer the question?
Oh, I consider it the dwelling and a building the same.
Is there anywhere in the resolutions that would cause you to conclude that a dwelling and a building are the same thing?
It's a structure.
No, I understand what you're reading, the definition, but I'm talking about, is there anywhere in the resolutions that identify a building and a dwelling as being one and the same? Yes or no? Okay. So you'd agree with me that the first step for the use to be considered as a hotel or motel is we would have to find that the structure is in fact a building and not a dwelling, correct?
Yes.
Now,
Wait a minute.
Now,
I
No,
don't know that
no,
it could
good
be
try.
both.
Wait a minute.
One doesn't
No,
exclude
no,
the other, so.
He's answered the questions. We're gonna make a
Both.
record here. I'm objecting to a continued interruption of the witness. He can answer the question, the record can be made, and then we can move from there.
Can you read us the definition of a dwelling, so we would have
Sure.
something to go by?
Of course, it's in your definitions.
Right, and what it says is,
Well, here, well,
any building or structure,
So,
any building or structure, except a mobile home.
we'll get to the building. Bottom line is, it is a dwelling and not a building. So I've already made the record that I need to make. So let's move on to the issue relating to the bed and breakfast. Sir, what's your understanding of a bed and breakfast? What's a bed and breakfast? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's a privately owned structure or residence where guest bedrooms are offered for compensation by the day, week, or month, for lodging or meals and lodging, and in which no cooking or similar housekeeping equipment is provided for the guests. The lodging establishment is permitted as a conditional use in the B1A or B2 zoning district.
Okay. Now, you'd agree with me that the Auburn resolutions do not define what a private owner-occupied residence is, correct? And if you want to look at the definitions, please feel free to do so. I looked at them and found that there's no such definition.
I don't have any answer there. One way or the other.
Well, do you have the definitions in front of you? I can give you them. Oops. This is a copy of the Auburn Resolution, Article 2, which talk about definitions.
I don't understand your point. What is your point
I'm-
specifically?
My question is, I'm not making a point, my question is, do those definitions, contained within those definitions, is there a term or terms that state private owner occupied residence, what that would mean?
I don't know what he's-
How about, is there a definition of residence? Pardon me?
Nope.
Okay. So you'd agree with me that in order for my client, Sandy Mara, to be held accountable for the zoning violation on the bed and breakfast, that use of the dwelling would have to fall within the definition of bed and breakfast that you read just earlier, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you did mention that within the definition, it talks about a private owner-occupied residence, which you'd agree with me, we don't know what that may mean within the context of the Auburn resolutions, correct?
Oh, I know what it means. It means private owned residence, period. Owned by the people who live there, or if they enter into a lease agreement, that's different. A long-term lease agreement, neither of which is the case here. Yes, she's there, I mean, her family resides there part of the time, but there are people there, guests are there, and she's charging them for it.
Okay, you bring up a good point. Is there any law or resolution that you're aware of in Auburn that would prohibit renting of a home for a day?
No.
How about for a week? For a month?
No.
How about for a year?
No.
Okay. So you'd agree with me that residents and owners of homes in Auburn can rent their homes as they may see fit by the day or week or month, correct?
Right.
Now, in this particular instance, you'd agree with me that the entire dwelling is being rented by my client for whatever period of time, correct?
I don't know that. I don't know if some of the residents are there as well. I don't know. Is Mrs. Mara there or her children there? I don't know that answer.
Okay, so you don't have any evidence to support your claim that she's operating as a bed and
No.
breakfast, right?
Mr. Longo, I do.
Yes, I do because of the
In her own
website.
write-up
Whatever.
for Airbnb and VBRO, which are the two places that she has basically advertised her
I
services.
concede that.
Where she's been there. I do have one question. To the best of your knowledge, has she ever received compensation for people outside of her family staying there for a period of time?
I'm not here to testify, first of all.
First, I'm
Second of all,
asking you
that's
a
an
question.
irrelevant question, so I'm
How's that
gonna finish with my
irrelevant?
I'm gonna finish with my cross-examination because it's
It'll be
not.
the next question to you, Mr. Longo. Either you know or you don't know.
I'm not gonna answer your questions. So, going back, sir,
Are you representing the Mars right now?
I am representing the Mars. I'm not here, and you cannot compel me to answer questions, first of all, in the middle of my cross-examination.
Then why are you wasting your time?
Why are you wasting your
This is gonna be
time?
a one-sided
I'm not,
investigation.
I will get done with what I need to do here with the questions, and then we'll move on. So, at this point, sir, you'd agree with me that you don't know one way or another whether or not Mrs. Mara is at the home or not at the home when guests are present, correct?
I do know,
How do you know that?
because I've read the reviews, and the people stated that she's there.
She actually states
Wait,
in her
wait, wait,
Airbnb write-up when she will be there and when she will not be there.
Okay. So, my point is, you don't have any direct knowledge, correct?
No, I
You're
haven't been
basing-
inside there, no.
So you're basing something that's a record that hasn't been authenticated or verified, correct? Okay. Now, you'd agree with me that the bed and breakfast prohibition under the Auburn resolution contemplates a homeowner or a private owner, I guess, owner-occupied residence.
Well, we don't know what that means.
That's exactly right, that's why we're here, we're gonna find out eventually.
Get a Webster's dictionary and look up the words. I mean, when we write zoning, we think that somebody might have some knowledge of the English language and what the words mean. Private owner, that means it's one person that owns the place, it's privately owned.
What
It's
if
not a
two people own it?
corporation. Well, then it,
Can a company own a house in Auburn?
yeah, they
Well, then
can.
it's not a private owner under your definition. Can multiple people own a house in Auburn?
I'm sure they can.
Right, and it's not, then it doesn't meet your definition.
But you're
Therein
saying
lies the
private
nub.
means one.
No, I'm saying it says private owner, singular. So, be that as it may, you're aware that the people who may rent the Marat dwelling have access to the kitchen and cooking facilities, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
And you're aware that they have use of housekeeping equipment, what might be there, correct?
I suppose so, I don't have any evidence one way or the other there.
Right. And you're just here to present the evidence that you're aware of, correct?
Yeah. I'm aware that she's, from her reviews, which is according to you is not right, that she allows people to cook, but I don't know that they clean, they vacuum, whatever, I have no idea. And then, none of the reviews that I read said that, so.
And under the bed and breakfast definition, it says that no cooking or similar housekeeping equipment is provided for guest use. See that? So you'd agree with me, by the mere fact that there's cooking allowed, and there's housekeeping equipment provided, that by itself would eliminate the Mara residence from being considered a bed and breakfast, correct?
Under the definition, yes.
Are you aware of any reasons why a dwelling would be defined in the resolutions and also a building defined in the resolutions? But you'd agree they're two different things, correct?
They can be, they don't always be. Under the definition of dwelling, it uses the term building. You know, it could or could not be, yes.
Well, we do know that in this context, that brings us here today, that you testified earlier that the Mara residence is a dwelling,
Yeah.
right?
It's a single-family dwelling, yes.
And under the building's definition, you'd agree with me that the word dwelling is not found, correct?
Under the building, yes.
marked as Exhibit 1, and I've got more copies. And this is the notice of public hearing. And that notice would contain basically your zoning violations that you issued in this case, correct?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
And there are no other zoning violations that you've considered or issued in connection with the Mara residence other than those stated on Exhibit 1, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to hand you what we've marked as Exhibit 2, which is a copy of the definitions that I believe you referenced earlier that are part of the Auburn Township resolutions, correct?
Correct.
And those are the same definitions that you referenced during your testimony earlier.
Correct.
So hypothetically, you as a zoning inspector would not have any reason to investigate or issue citations to Auburn Township residents who rent their homes or dwellings out and receive compensation for renting the dwellings, correct? You'd agree with me?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
So in this case, if my client was renting her dwelling on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, you'd have no reason to issue a citation to her, correct?
The way you put it, no, but
Okay,
still
thank
not
you.
right.
Thank you.
Is that with her living in the
Yeah, I was
dwelling,
just
and
gonna
she
say.
would be renting it on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis?
He answered my question.
With her in place, was the
Well, he
question?
wants
We need
clarification.
clarification on
Yeah,
this.
if you're
We
only
want
gonna get,
clarification for your question. Is it with her in place or her not in the structure?
You tell us, sir. Mr. Kitco?
What's that?
Well, with you.
No, you answer it.
Oh, no, I
Why
asked
do I
you.
have to answer it?
Well, because I've asked
According
you,
to her ad, yes, she's there.
is there a difference between her being there and not there?
Is there a difference?
And so if she was there, she could be a guest of the tenant, correct?
I guess.
Right?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. And if she's not there, then she's able to rent the premises and put the dwelling in possession of the tenant, correct?
Yes. I'd have to see the lease on that situation.
Well, do you have any authority or power to see leases?
No, but you're twisting words and everything else.
No, I'm not twisting
It's
words.
plain
I'm-
and simple.
Well, I don't think that that's what's happening.
I'm done answering questions, period.
You're not gonna answer any more questions?
No. No.
None?
you don't wanna answer any questions, why should he?
Just procedurally, he needs to be able to cross-examine the witness.
Correct.
And
And
so
if
it-
he's representing his client, we wanna ask questions on
The
behalf of
client.
his client, he needs to answer those questions.
Correct. This is the
If
zoning.
he can't answer our questions,
BZA.
how are we supposed to make the decision? He says,
Frank,
in
Frank.
his mind,
Please talk to counsel and ask whether you need to.
Pardon me?
Please ask advice of counsel and find out whether you have to answer this question.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan.
I would, Mr. Longo
Mhm.
needs to be given an opportunity to cross-examine.
but does he ever have to answer any questions on behalf of his client?
He's here representing Ms. Mara, he's not here to testify, so, he's,
So
I think the question is,
how
can,
are we ever gonna make a decision
Why
if
are
we
we
can't
here? Oh, we're just
talk to
putting-
the one that is doing what we
I
say
was-
is not right?
that is on, so, just like you started your hearing, you said that it's their burden to present their case.
Right,
If they don't have Ms. Mara here, or someone to present the evidence that you want to hear,
Okay.
then that can factor into your decision. So
Okay.
there may be questions that you wanna ask of Ms. Mara, and she is not here today.
But
Okay.
So, but
I can
as the
present.
attorney,
But
All
my
right.
question is.
I got it.
Does
I
that
understand
make
what you're
sense?
saying.
Okay.
But my question to you
Do I have to
is,
ask him?
he needs to talk to you whether he is compelled to answer this question or not.
my advice would be,
Yes.
you need to give the appellant in this case an opportunity to cross-examine in a 2506 appeal, if that was where this case ended up.
Okay.
If he isn't given the opportunity to examine, that's a reason to reopen the record, and they'll start the case all over again up in common pleas.
But can he refuse to answer the question?
I mean,
I mean, we're not in
I
a
don't
court, I know
understand.
this is not technically a court of law.
All right.
We're not
I
a
don't
judge.
understand.
Are you done asking questions?
He
I
didn't want to
may
be,
be.
he refused to answer any more questions. I think my question to you is, can he procedurally wise refuse to answer any more questions?
I suppose you can, however, I mean, there's a difference between if the answer is I don't know, and the answer is I don't know. If you just on principle don't wanna answer his questions anymore, I would say that's gonna raise some issues on the
I
table.
would agree, so Frank,
So I think
upon
you
upon
should answer
advice,
the question,
All
but
right.
if your answer is I
Advice.
don't know, then that's okay,
yes.
if that's the truthful answer.
Okay. Do you have more to say?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Do you know the definition of owner occupied under the, is there, well, let me back up. Is there a definition of owner occupied in the Auburn resolutions?
Don't know.
Would you like to refer to Exhibit 2 to see if there is a definition? Pardon me?
There is not a definition of it.
Can we have our copies of those that you had said you had, please, sir?
I don't believe there is.
If you could just circulate them. I'm sorry?
I don't believe there is.
Yeah. Now, under the definition section, it says, if you, are you looking at something?
No, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Okay, under Article 2.01 A7, do you see that? Interpretation.
Not defined specifically in this resolution, shall have their usual and customary meaning.
Okay, correct? Correct. You agree with that?
Yeah.
And you'd agree with me that the definitions that are specifically defined in the resolution would also have specific meaning based upon those definitions, correct?
Correct.
So you'd agree with me that you as a zoning inspector are bound to follow the definitions that are set forth in the Auburn resolutions, correct?
Correct.
And have you done that in this case?
I have, because it's my interpretation.
Right.
That is in fact true, you are the
You are
interpreter
the
of the
instructor.
regulations. and
That's his
rules
job.
and that.
So, just for point of clarification, I'm just curious. So, if Mr. Kitco interprets a resolution or definition, is it the commission's position that that's the end-all, be-all?
Unless you could prove that it was the wrong decision.
Well, right, well, I just think I did, and I think we've
No,
established.
we're the ones that will tell you.
No, what you, what
Well,
is,
you know who's gonna tell us? You know what a judge does?
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
I
that's
do.
who's gonna tell us. You know
Okay.
what the Court of Appeals tells us? That's what tells us.
Okay.
not
oh, that's
you.
fine, that's fine.
Right.
That young lady wanted,
Oh.
if you're done, she would
Well,
like to.
I'm not done.
Oh, you're not done yet? There'll be another
Thank
minute.
you.
I haven't forgotten you. You
Thank
just won't
you.
let me get a word in.
Right, I know, I see that. It's like television.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
Seriously?
Yes, it
Thank
is.
you.
Well, you were just chuckling.
Oh my. I
Yes,
get it.
you were.
But we do things in Ohio just like they do in California.
I'm from Ohio, sir.
Are you? I think
Yes.
from California.
Sorry?
Oh, no, I thought you moved in from California. I thought that there was issue in terms of Ohio
The
law versus
bi-coastal,
federal.
sir.
You're bi-postal, I'm sorry, postal?
Coastal,
Oh.
if you will.
So you'd agree with me that if the Mara residence did not fit within the definition of a hotel motel, then the zoning violation wouldn't apply, correct?
Under my interpretation, it does.
Well, I know that that's why we're here,
Okay.
but if your interpretation happens to be wrong, right? You with me there? If your interpretation happens to be wrong, then you'd agree with me that the zoning violation would be erroneous, correct?
Correct.
And that would pertain as well to a bed and breakfast, correct?
Yeah.
And you'd agree with me that based upon what you've seen on, I'll start that, based upon your understanding and knowledge, the Mara residence dwelling is rented or placed in the custody of others for compensation on a basis, let me back up, the entire residence is rented, correct?
I don't know that the entire residence is rented, but I know that parts of it are rented.
What parts?
Well, she advertises 6 but can sleep 6, you know, and things like that. I don't know if she's there all the time, part of the time. We'd have yet to establish that because she never came and answered our request, our first request. Simply, what is happening, what is going on, before we ever sent a violation.
I see, and how did you go about doing that?
We sent a letter to her and asked her,
Do you have a copy of the letter?
I'm sure that it's in the file somewhere.
Is the file here?
Jane, we have,
I think you got a copy of it when I asked for the records.
I didn't see that. I got a May 6th letter, and I believe an April 12th.
It's probably the April 12th one.
That would be the letter that you're talking about? Snatch that. So I'm gonna hand it over to Mark, as exhibit 4. Could you identify that for the record?
yes, so I was sent to her in April 12th, 2019.
Is that the letter that you were just referencing for inquiry that you made with Mrs. Mara asking you for information?
Yes,
Were there any others?
I believe they're following this one, there's a certified one.
And that would have been the May 6th letter, right?
I would assume yes.
And I'm going to hand you what we've marked as exhibit 3.
That's the May 6th letter?
Yes, sir. Would you like to pass these out? Mr. Giddens, thank you. And what we've marked as exhibit 3. Is that the May 6th? Yes. Were there any other communications other than those 2 letters?
No.
So the letter that you were talking about where you've asked Mrs. Mara to provide information would have been specifically exhibit 4, the April 12th letter, correct?
Yeah, the April 12th letter is asking her, yes.
Is it asking her for any information?
It's asked her if she's in disagreement with the above phrase, please contact this office.
Or the fact that she's ignored it would give you the impression that she is in disagreement with it, right?
Pardon me?
The fact that she ignored it would have given you the impression that she was in disagreement with it. correct?
No,
Did you get any impression that she was in agreement with it?
no, I got nothing. As I stated for the record before, we've had no communication with her, period.
What information specifically did you ask her for?
Well, normally when you send a
No, no, no,
letter,
no.
when we send a letter like this,
Mhm.
95% of the time, the
Mhm.
person or people that we send it to respond by telephone or come in and see us or to explain what is going on, and we go from there. In this case, none of that took place.
So she fell within the 5% of the respondents, right? Yes?
Yeah.
Did that offend you?
No, but
So, let me ask you this. What information specifically did you request from her in that letter?
well, I asked her what did I ask her? Okay, Normally Lane, is temporary lodging? All she could have said was yes.
Okay, well, here,
She said nothing.
I'm looking at the April 12th letter.
Yeah.
Okay, can you show me where you've asked her for any information? Anything?
Being used as temporary lodging and offered to the public, which is not permitted in Auburn Township zoning resolution.
Well, that's a conclusion you made, correct? Right?
It's a conclusion I made.
Yes.
It's well, yeah,
Okay, so, but maybe I'm,
Right.
I might be inartfully asking this question. Could you tell me, or point to me on the April 12th letter where you asked Mrs. Meyer for information?
other than if she's in disagreement with that statement.
So you didn't ask her for any information, you just asked if she was in agreement or disagreement, right?
There's context on your play on words, but yeah.
Well, no, I'm not playing with words, I'm looking at the letter, and I'm just asking you, can you show me what information you asked her for and where it would be stated in the letter? You'd agree with me that there is no such reference, correct?
Correct.
Jane, on what date did you do the research for the Airbnb and VVRO?
What date?
Yeah, do you remember what day you looked into that?
I've been sworn in, I can't speak.
Sorry. Franklin, is this about the time that the Airbnb was researched?
I would imagine, yes.
What about VRBO, I'm sorry.
Pardon me?
The other website, VRBO, about the same time?
Yeah.
That was more in June.
Or after the,
Yeah.
okay, so the first one,
I
I'm
can give it to you.
pretty convinced that she's advertising that it is a bed and breakfast on a bed and breakfast
It's not a-
website.
Well, it's not a bed and breakfast website. To my understanding, you might have more knowledge.
No, I don't, I just know
The
what.
B&B stands for bed and bath, which I never knew before. So, with that said, you can do your research and I might be wrong, so I'm here testifying with the caveat that I may in fact be wrong. So, again, from the standpoint of my client receiving compensation for renting her entire dwelling to third parties, that's not in dispute. She receives money, she rents her entire dwelling to other people.
We've never established she rents her entire dwelling.
Well,
That's never been established.
Well, that, here,
You keep
let's-
trying to
just for a
establish
second.
that,
Sir.
but it's not been established.
Guess what?
Don't
There's no-
suggest it has if it
I'm
hasn't.
telling you it has been, and I'm
Well,
telling you.
that's
that-
not what I heard. I've
Yeah.
been sitting here the whole
I
time.
just, are we done asking Mr. Kipko questions?
For now, yes.
Okay, so now we can address the board? Okay,
Sure.
go ahead. Now, that's a little bit different, because I didn't want to interrupt.
No, no, and
As
I
long as you were
appreciate-
doing examination on that cross, but doing examination on the witness.
And I appreciate that, Mr.
Now you have if you want to make a statement or ask questions, that's okay now.
And I would reserve my
Read
right to
that.
Okay.
reconvene my questioning
All
of
right.
the zoning inspector. So with that said, the record speaks for itself. And whether the board likes it, doesn't like it, whether you think it's a good idea, bad idea, doesn't matter. The resolutions are in place for a reason, the definitions are in place for a reason. Whether this is a good idea, whether B&B is a good idea, bad idea, until it comes to your home, I mean, who knows? There may be people in this room that use B&B, and when you go to and rent those homes, the neighbor may not like the fact that you're parking your ugly car in the driveway, or the fact that you've got 6 kids, when in fact, the owner doesn't have any. So the fact that this process or this renting of dwellings is here has to be considered in view and in light of the definitions that are set forth in the Auburn resolutions, period. And again, I'm not here to argue whether or not it's a good idea, bad idea, whether if a neighbor likes it, doesn't like it. The issue is it a violation of the Auburn resolutions, the zoning resolutions? It is not. And with all due respect, well, when you read the record, it's going to be very simple, and it's going to be very clear that there's no evidence that my client has in fact violated any zoning ordinance, and in fact, the definitions that exist and apply to a dwelling don't apply to a hotel motel. In order for a hotel motel to be cited for that, it's got to be a building. My client's house is not a building, for starters. Okay? It is a dwelling, and if you don't like the definitions, then I suggest that you redo the definitions, redo the resolutions, and take whatever steps you need to do legally. Hire outside counsel, or Mr. Flaze's office is very, very competent, very good lawyers. They can advise you on how to redo and restructure the definitions that exist. But with respect to the definitions that exist here, you might not like them, Mr. Gibbons, and that's not for me to
Well, you're
address.
interpreting
Oh, no, I'm not
the
interpreting
resolutions that I am, so.
I'm not interpreting anything. I'm taking the evidence that's been presented by the zoning inspector, and he's the one that makes the decisions on how to interpret the definitions that are very clearly written.
Actually, it's
And
the
if
other way
the-
around. That's why we're here. He interprets them to the best of his ability. We will hear him using at his discretion. He'll tell us how he feels. Many of the decisions from this board have gone against his recommendations.
Well, I'm not interested in those. I'm
Okay.
just interested in applying the definitions that exist here. So, and when you do that, when you apply the definitions, there are going to be a lot of legal expenses that are going to be incurred that are unnecessary if the definitions that exist, that Auburn Township has created, are properly applied.
Yeah, but it appears that the definitions that you're questioning, which you've questioned every word in our resolution, and the resolution was written by lay people over years and years and years, and they assumed that most of the people that were gonna read this resolution had some command of the English language. They didn't write a Webster's dictionary to go with it to determine what private means or what owner means. These are normal things that a normal person would read a sentence and understand what it means if they're past the 4th grade.
With all due respect,
Well, I need
Go
to be
ahead.
sworn in, I've got a couple of points I want for the record, so.
Okay.
No, I asked for the floor, he granted it. Do you want to swear me in?
You swear the testimony in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Okay, let's go back to the definition of structure. Anything constructed or erected that requires location on the ground or is attached to something having location on the ground. We go into the definition of hotel motel, and this is kind of critical, and I believe a building in which temporary, and that's the key word here, temporary lodging is provided and offered to the public for compensation. I think it's been established that she offers her structure for compensation. And then if you go into the definition of building and dwelling, they're almost interchangeable definitions.
Correct.
We can nitpick the verbiage in it, but ultimately they're interchangeable words.
He has addressed any definitions in Article 2.
And temporary is the key thing on the rental. Renting day, weekly, monthly, when it was referenced that you're allowed to do that, you are, if it's a permanent residence. With it being temporary, this is not a permanent residence.
Mr. Longo,
sir, if I could for the record,
absolutely.
could you state your name and your position with the Auburn Township, ma'am?
My position tonight is the Secretary of the Board of Appeals. I'm also the Assistant Zoning Inspector.
And your name is?
Jane Hardy, Hardy.
Thank you.
It says, I don't have a copy of one. It says though that the person who spends the night, or whoever books a night or a room in the dwelling or structure has to sign a rental agreement. Do we have a copy of the rental agreement?
Where's that cited? In the
It
resolution?
says, no, it says it in the advertising that the young
Oh,
lady puts
no,
out.
no, we don't have a copy of the rental agreement, but
Is it, can we see one?
I don't have one.
Can one be provided?
I'll think about it.
That may be a key point of this whole thing. If there's anywhere in that rental agreement
It says,
that might say something about bed and breakfast or hotel, or I'd like to see it for my own edification.
I'll find out if we will provide that. I'll talk to my client, number one. Number two, this is the hearing, if that was something that was to be requested, I would have thought that the zoning inspector would have done that at least back in April or May. With that said, those definitions or those documents have nothing to do with the zoning violations that have been lodged against my client. She doesn't have an obligation to provide evidence to the zoning inspector for him to issue additional zoning violations. So if there are additional zoning violations that are going to be issued, we'll deal with it then.
So, as you've already pointed out, you foresee this going to the Court of Law and it was a Court of Appeals.
Well, I can see with the better
Yes,
balance,
I understand.
For sure.
My question, at that point, that evidence will have to be brought forward, I would presume.
Presume not.
I think with someone.
Okay, can I address, the young lady back here has been waiting all night to speak? Sure.
Sure,
Please.
unless
state
Rob
your
wants to
name.
speak first,
Please state your name for the record so we can get it all.
yes,
in.
and,
Could you swear her into
my
it?
name is
Oh, yeah, you have to
Kathy
get
Pavia.
sworn in again too.
Sure,
Do you swear the testimony in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, thank you. My name's Kathy Pavia, and I live right across from Ms. Mara. She's that's right. And I can tell you that this house has been rented by many people, without a doubt. And it's also advertised on the internet as an Airbnb. I don't understand why you don't know that. I'm addressing you, yes. Because you led us to believe that you don't know that.
Pardon me?
I think you heard me.
No, I'm not sure what I led you to believe.
Well, you seem
Ma'am,
to
here, I'm not
believe-
here to answer your questions, so if you want
Well,
to make a
then,
determination,
you know, well,
address the board,
No,
feel free.
I would like for you to answer questions. Why can't you?
I've made my position very clear. I've acknowledged that my client has received compensation for renting her dwelling now from a number of people. What's your next question? If you
Is it an Airbnb?
don't know what an Airbnb is, nor do I care.
Well, I do.
Well, good. That's why you're here.
Right. Well, here's the point. She's running a business. An Airbnb is a business,
Okay.
and it's not a business district. The zoning commission has decided it's a residential district. It has been written that way, which should be respected. We zone things so that things can be in a certain order. I don't appreciate coming into the cul-de-sac and having 10 or so cars in the cul-de-sac and having my own mailbox blocked by cars that are perhaps by people who are renting Sandy's home. It's inconvenient. It's also a hazard. Do you know why it's a hazard? Because it's a small cul-de-sac. If an emergency vehicle or several have to come in, they cannot. But basically what I'm saying is there shouldn't be a business in the cul-de-sac. It's for private homes. Now, if she wanted to rent her home on a yearly basis with a family in it, fine, who cares, you know, if they're nice people. But, you know, the other fact of the matter is, you know, she says on the internet that these people there can be up to 24 people staying in that home. That's absurd.
Do you agree that 24, she does state that 24 people can't stay there?
I haven't seen it.
Okay, we all have.
Well,
Yes,
that's,
What's the
we have.
definition of a single-family residence?
that's a whole other zoning violation potentially.
I-
So, I mean, that's not even an issue, so that I'm prepared to address.
Well, you know, all I have is for my own personal evaluation here, and that's that we bought this house with the idea that we were going to be living in the woods, in a private area. We spent a certain amount of dollars doing that. And I know enough about real estate to tell you that if I had known that this was a business venture living next to me, then there would have been a difference in the price of that home. So what she's compromised is she's also compromised my financials in terms of how much I paid for that house.
Have you considered an Airbnb?
You know what? Don't get smart with me,
Please don't point your
because
finger.
I will, I can.
I just want-
What's gonna make you stop me?
Oh, nothing's gonna make me stop you, of course not. I just wondered.
Well, let's be civil with
Well,
one another.
okay,
absolutely.
I'll tell you, I could tell you what I would consider. If she wants to be a B&B, I could say, well, gee, I have a bigger home than she does. I could run a B&B. If she's gonna run a B&B, maybe I will too. And maybe I'll just undercut her price, offer to have more people stay with me, and maybe have entertainment there, and maybe cook for her, and run her own business. How would that be? Would that be my right?
Yes, it would be.
I don't think so.
Well, you just asked me.
Not
You know
under
what?
Not under our zoning.
That's
You asked me a
right.
question, but I would agree with you.
No, and I'm not interested in doing that. That's not my interest. But another issue that I would just simply like to bring up, when I first moved here,
Would you say that now?
Hmm?
Would you say that now?
What?
So you're communicating with a board member here, a note in an open meeting, and you're not allowed to do that, so.
well, I think
Mr.
I have the floor, I should be
Well,
the
that's
one that
okay.
would be
Mr.
concerned
Ross,
about
All
it,
right.
I'm not.
You can do whatever you want with that, no, there's nothing secret or private about it.
Would you read it into the record?
I think
No,
you're
that-
interrupting me, sir.
Well, just don't. Get rid of the note. Go ahead.
Thank you. When I first moved here, I came into this township because I didn't know what a platted community was. I just was curious about what that meant, and I still don't really understand it, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm having a nice conversation with Jane and Frank, and I mentioned, you know, in California, where we formerly lived, we had chickens. And we just wanted a few hens. Because after all, we just acquired 2.7 acres, and I guess I assumed I could have a couple of chickens, you know, wasn't gonna raise cattle. Anyway, Frank said, well, I'm sorry you can't have chickens. And I thought, oh, well, okay, I guess that's the rule. So, I'm following the rule. So, what I would like to say is, well, if I can't have a couple of chickens, then why can Sandy have 24 people over to her house and rent it out?
Well, that's exactly where we're at. Basically, our zoning inspector says she can.
You came in here prior to getting the chickens?
Oh, I don't have the chickens.
That's what I'm saying, so you came in here prior to getting the chickens, unlike coming in here prior to opening a bed and breakfast? In a
Yeah, I wouldn't
residential
have,
zoned
I would have, if
area?
it were me, and I were gonna open a B&B, I
would
certainly
check my
would
zoning
find out,
first.
yeah.
It says all
I
the
would have said, well, can I
websites
do
for
that?
opening those organizations
Yeah, and I,
discuss about zoning laws.
precisely, I
Yes.
don't, I follow the rules. And I would also like to say, I'm wondering why Sandy kept this under the radar for so long, and I think she knows why. It's because you're not allowed to do it. You're not zoned for it. And I'm wondering why she isn't here tonight.
So is this board.
Yeah.
The resolutions state that residents can be represented by council, which is, could we take a look at that letter, that note that Mr. Brown just passed to you, Mr. Clarkson?
I guess I'm finished,
You're finished,
but I would
thank you.
I would like to know what the note says. Let's just see what it is.
The note just for, the record says rein her in and let's move on. So if we mark this up.
Rein me in?
Basically, you made your point, and he wants to take the meeting over with.
You can just mark this as an exhibit.
And who's that from?
Mr. Brockman to Mr.
Mr.
Thompson.
Brockman gave that to me.
Wow, thank you.
I'd like to ask Chief Phillips, I know you were pretty explicit in a letter or investigation that you did into this matter with your fire department and your EMS. You want to elaborate on that a little bit and give us
Well,
some
there's
background
no
on that?
investigation, and I haven't been to the site, and up till this, I have been unaware of it. Oh, sorry, I got this one.
Oh, thank you.
Do you swear the testimony in this matter will be the truth, the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. John L. Phillips, Auburn Fire Chief. So continuing. Zoning secretary and Frank Hicko had questioned me about safety concerns they had. My sole issue here is life safety and protection of property. That's my sole issue. To have a bed and breakfast is contrary to that structure's intended use, I believe. Other than that, I gave Jane a letter of a number of issues that could be cited by the fire department as fire code issues. Hopefully that answers the question.
We do.
There's a letter not written by the chief, but written by one of the chief's lieutenants.
Correspondence from my lieutenant, who's our chief fire prevention officer, to me.
Yeah, we got copies of it.
I might have it, I have it.
With a list of all the things.
It's
Possible.
For it to continue.
What does, is there a maximum capacity that this dwelling this size should realistically be considered safe? I mean, they're advertising 24 people can use this place, is that
I would
considered
not consider that a
excessive?
safe use. My concern would be egress, doors, how they get up and down to first and second floor. Number of issues that could come into play depending on how you look at the building. Bed and breakfast is what I was looking at is. And things like fire alarm systems, sprinklers, etc. are usually considered in places like of that nature.
Is this something similar that you would have in a hotel type of environment?
Very similar.
Mr. Longo.
Another point, I just thought about it because he's talking about safety. That house is on a septic system. Geauga County gauges its septic systems on how many bedrooms are in the house and how much sewage it can treat per day. If you overload the house, you're gonna overload the sewage, which is gonna create another problem for the neighborhood because you're gonna have a failing septic system that could technically cause problems. It wasn't designed to do what she's doing. That's why our resolution says it needs to be in the B1 or B2 area where there's sewers in some of these areas, where it's more fitting for this type of business.
Mr. Longo.
Yes, sir.
You're speaking for your client, you're here to represent your client. And what it breaks down to me is, it's almost a matter of interpretation of the ordinances and the resolutions that we have here in our township. And what you're basically claiming is that there's a disagreement based upon how you interpret the rules or the wording, and how maybe someone who wrote these interprets the rule. Am I wrong by saying that?
With all due respect, I understand the concept, okay, and I respect what you're telling me, but my position is based solely on how the resolutions and the definitions are drafted, how the use of the property is how the property is being used. Okay, and if the use of the property doesn't meet the definition of a bed and breakfast, it's not a bed and breakfast. But if the use of the property doesn't meet the definition of a hotel, motel, there's no violation. So in order for my client to be liable for the violations, there has to be, the definitions of those things have to be met. So based on the zoning inspector's testimony, the evidence, the lack of evidence, those uses are not prohibited. She is renting it's real simple, like it or don't like it, she is renting her house, her entire dwelling, to third parties for a day, a week, a month, whatever the term is. I don't know how she's even advertising it, but that's the reality. They've got full use of the kitchen, full use of the household equipment. It is not a bed and breakfast, and we've established that. So the reality of it is, if it's not a bed and breakfast, she can't be violating the resolution. And that's just how the resolutions are written. And maybe they need to be rewritten.
No. That is your interpretation.
No, it's.
No, excuse me, yeah, we'd let you have the floor.
Go ahead.
That is your interpretation of what you think the resolutions say, or the law, or the ordinances say. You have come in and you've given a terrific presentation, by the way. You represented your client, as you should, with zeal. But at the same time, you've also told us that, you're not sure if this is a bed and breakfast, you're not sure what a bed and breakfast is, and you have not seen the advertisements that we have seen, which is, in our viewpoint, it's like, falls under maybe somebody else's interpretation of a hotel. And because we may see it differently than you see it, and I can understand it, maybe we just don't see it. Again, it's a matter of semantics as to who, and your interpretation, your opinion. We have our opinion, or others people have their opinion, and you're right. Maybe, I expect, you're gonna get a decision, whether it's adverse or not, you're gonna get a decision. And I can expect, if you get the decision that you don't want to get tonight, I would expect you to represent your client and take this on further. But you also have to respect somebody else's interpretation of the rulings. And what we have seen, the advertisement, what you have already stated, you have never seen, and you're basically keeping your entire argument is based upon the wordings of the resolutions and the ordinances, and or Mr. Kitko's letters, or Mr. Kitko's testimony.
Correct.
And there might be someone here, or somebody who might feel that they disagree with you.
I respect that.
Okay, thank you.
There's no
That's the
problem.
whole case that we're here with, right?
I'm not.
Mr. Longo, are you saying that it's not a bed and breakfast because she provides the opportunity for her guests to come?
It's a definition, right? She's not operating a bed and breakfast.
As I'm
Correct.
asking, you're stating because, other than that, it reads, she is a bed and breakfast by
Okay,
our
it's
definition.
No, it's renting
From
guest
Article
rooms.
2,
No,
will you
no.
please read your exhibit?
Here,
Article
you
2,
read
bed
it.
and-
No.
I just
Here,
did.
I've never been, you need to
I
read
just
this.
did.
Guest rooms, okay? So carefully read it.
Okay,
It's
I'll read it.
renting
A
guest
private
rooms,
owner,
not the house.
Mr. Longo, a private owner-occupied residence where guest bedrooms are offered for compensation by day, week, or month for
Not the
lodging,
entire
meals,
dwelling.
and lodging.
So if
Correct.
she wanted to,
So?
she could rent out every room in that place to anybody she wanted to, whether it was one day, one night,
That's
1
not
week.
true. That's guest card.
Right, and because she's basically, what you're basically saying is, it's a boarding house.
No, that would be a boarding house.
Oh,
She's
well,
renting the entire dwelling,
that's
not
the definition
guest
either.
house, not guest rooms. Here, I'm not here.
So hotel or motel is a building in which temporary lodging is provided and offered to the public for compensation.
Correct, this is not a building,
In
it's a
that
dwelling.
zoned area,
Yeah, but-
are we allowed
And a
to?
building and a
But
structure.
on
Yeah,
the
that's structure,
Building
well,
is identified
that's
as-
for somebody else to decide.
I agree.
This is a court that's gonna decide it, and that's fine. You, with all due respect, this is not gonna
Where's
be
the
the
phrase
last time you're
defined
gonna address
specifically
this,
in the
and you
resolution
need to
shall
redo your
have their
resolutions,
usual
because
and
if there's a
customary
definition,
meaning.
if there's a definition of a building, which we know there is, and there's the definition of a dwelling.
Which includes a building. It does include a building.
No, it doesn't.
It does too, it clearly
Well,
states it.
then it should say dwelling.
Can I just, for just a second, everyone's talking over each other, that's gonna be really hard.
Yes,
For
record
sure.
it.
Okay, so if, just
I
so we
should-
have a clear record.
Well, I think we've all heard enough. And I've been here long enough.
There's two questions, or well, a question and a point. It keeps being alleged that the entire dwelling is being rented, and that word keeps popping up. I don't know if it's important or not. That hasn't been established in any fashion. And then, is this property deed restricted? Is it in some type of subdivision? Am I missing something there?
I don't know.
How did the chicken restriction come into this whole thing?
Well, that's because once the subdivision is over a certain percentage built, you can't have new agricultural use that.
That's not necessarily deed restriction, it's a zoning. Okay.
Is there a homeowners association?
No.
No, there isn't.
No deed restriction on something like this?
Does anybody else have anything to say? Okay, sir?
Swear me in.
You swear the testimony that's bearing the truth, the truth, and nothing but the truth,
I do. Good evening. My name is Robert Byro, and my wife Kathy and I reside at 11360 Normandy Lane. We are the house in the center of the cul-de-sac. 2 years ago, we drove the 2,500 miles to escape the ever-increasing congestion and crime of Los Angeles for the serenity and solitude of the Chagrin Falls area. We purchased our current home with these attributes in mind. We met our neighbors, Sandy Mara included, and everyone seemed very nice and like-minded regarding the qualities of the area in which we live. In recent months, after seeing an unusual amount of cars coming and going from Sandy's property, we learned that she is now renting it on Airbnb and HomeAway, possibly others. She never consulted with any of us, which would have been the respectful and neighborly thing to do. I can only imagine that she knew that everyone's answer would have been to the negative. She advertises that the home will at any time accommodate 16+ guests and up to 24. That can be a heck of a lot of cars. While searching for our home, it certainly would have affected our decision to learn that one of the 5 homes in our cul-de-sac was being virtually used as a motel and/or party event retreat center. We are concerned about the constant coming and goings of strangers, overflow parking onto the cul-de-sac, and how this will affect our property values and our overall quality of life. From my understanding, as described in Article 4 of the Residential District Regulations, this area is designated as R2 and as such is limited to agriculture, one-family dwelling, adult group homes, adult family homes, public facilities. No mention of bed and breakfast, motel, or hotel. We implore the township to adhere to this mandate, and we oppose any variance or amendment to allow the commercialization and degradation of our safe and peaceful neighborhood. Thank you.
I have a couple quick questions. Sir, you came to avoid the crime from Los Angeles?
Correct.
Correct. And you noticed this, the use of the property as something that you didn't desire a few months ago?
Correct.
And at that time, did you call the Auburn Township Zoning Department?
No,
When did you make your first complaint?
I did not make any complaint as of yet.
Did your sure if your roommate, did she make a complaint?
No. We're anticipating what could happen.
So neither you or your roommate have made a complaint to this point, correct?
No, but we knew of these hearings and we thought we would come and listen and see what's going on.
That's fine. So, but just to be clear, until this evening, you have not voiced any objection to the use of the property to the Auburn Township Zoning Department, correct?
We have made inquiries, but we have not made complaints.
To whom did you make the inquiries?
I believe my wife spoke to Jane.
And she referenced Jane and Frank by first names. Was she referencing the zoning inspector as Frank and Jane being
Correct.
the secretary, the assistant zoning inspector?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
Within the months, did the presence of any African-American individuals cause you to make any complaints?
No.
Are you sure about that?
Of course I'm sure.
Would that have been a coincidence that your objection to this would have been within the same time period that we're talking about?
What coincidence?
That there was a black family potentially using the premises around the same time?
I am unaware of a black family. I did see one black man depart the premises. I have no knowledge of a black family, nor would it matter to me. I couldn't care less
Okay.
what color anyone is.
Okay. Fair. I don't have anything else.
Why bring up the race component of this?
I didn't bring up the rear, I was asked a question.
She did.
Yes, you did.
You certainly
Ask the
did.
question.
Come on.
You're bringing up the race component,
No, you, shame on you.
Why didn't you ask me if I saw an Asian?
Yeah.
because there haven't been any Asians
How do
occupying
you
the
know?
property.
How do you know? How do you know?
No.
Because I asked my client.
Really? Well, you're unaware that she's even advertised on the internet, so you know this?
Well,
This is part of the discussion.
this is part of the discussion.
You done, I finished?
Well,
Are you finished? I asked you, you would miss a question.
Sure.
You consider yourself an Auburn resident?
Yes.
I would too, I live here in town. How many complaints have you made where you live now, overall?
None.
And when you lived in Los Angeles, how often did you make complaints?
It depends.
Let me ask you another question. In other places where you've lived, have you just basically been a regular resident who would not make a complaint and probably just let it go by?
While living in the Los Angeles area, I have called the police many times for things going on in the neighborhood, if you consider that to be a complaint. Because these were actual things, occurrences going on.
One other quick question. You also asked, or you made the comment that this was also an event center,
Mhm.
as it is in the notes that we have here today. In the advertising, we see it as events
Correct.
being advertised, an event center. Are there, and I would have to ask, an event center, is there a definition of an event center or something like an event
Yes,
center?
there is.
That would maybe be different? Because she advertises it as an
As an
event center.
right.
Like I would presume,
At
we
the
have several
point
of them here in
she was
town.
cited for this, we weren't aware of the event center, and she could have been cited for an
Okay.
event center.
All right.
That hasn't been.
I said that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I know, but it's not part of this process, this proceeding.
Right, I'm answering his question, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hogan, you raised an interesting point. Have you had to call the police at any point in time since the time you began residing at your residence, Bob?
No.
Bob, could
Not
you
yet.
have, did you have that opportunity and chose not to?
An opportunity
Or
for,
when your mailbox was blocked, how's that? Did you choose not to call the police or the sheriff to ask them to remove their car from in front of your mailbox? You did present that car in front of your mailbox, correct?
I presented it.
But could you have called the sheriff to ask him to move the car if you so wanted to?
I suppose, yes.
Thank you. That's all.
It's an interesting concept here.
It is, isn't it?
It
Because
really
we're not a
is.
court of law.
No, I know, but you should read your opening remarks.
I did.
Well, you
I
should
hear
read
him
them
every
again.
day.
It's enough.
Yeah.
It's quasi legal.
No, I did it.
Mr. Longo,
I did. Thank you, Mr.
we don't
Hogan.
need the,
Now, that being said, I think we should,
Can I just add, you guys have referenced, if Mr. Longo doesn't oppose it, you guys have referenced an advertisement online throughout the hearing. Can that be entered as an
No.
exhibit? You would object to that?
Of course. Thank you.
it'll come up in court. I know we're going to court.
Well,
why, excuse me, why would you object to us presenting that as evidence?
I just would.
But that doesn't mean that we can't. You can object to it, but that means that we can still bring it as evidence. You can object, but if we want to present it as evidence, can we present it as evidence?
I had heard it referenced, but it wasn't marked as an exhibit, so I just wanted to try to clarify the record.
You wanna give
Okay, but we
us-
can continue to refer to it though, correct?
I think you would want to have it
Yes, presented as evidence.
an exhibit.
So we need to make it a part of the official record?
Well, it needs to be authenticated, first of all. It needs to
I
be
understand
on
that.
record.
I
will
understand.
object to it because it hasn't been properly authenticated. Period. With that said, we can talk about it later, but it's not, in my opinion.
Well, again,
That's why we've got case law.
I understand that, I don't need to be told that.
No, I'm just
This
saying.
is Broadman's. Well,
Thank you.
if we've got all the questions done, I think we should bring this matter to a close.
Thank you.
We do have all of this that really should be entered in as official evidence. It was in the packets showing the bookings, the temporary booking schedule, the pictures, the reviews, showing that she rents it both as a bed and breakfast, a hotel motel, based on our definition.
Okay, well, let's enter it in as evidence then.
Well, can we make it part of our record? It's not, so we don't have to use the term evidence?
Okay.
Can we say it's part of our
Well,
record?
Yeah,
But he's been giving everything to the court reporter.
No. I would like to make this, those documents that you have, Jane, I'd like to ask that you present those in as part of the record,
okay.
so that may be referred to possibly in another proceeding.
Mr. Longo, would you like a copy of what we're discussing?
Sure. Thank you. This was from Mr. Gibbons. Thank you, Mr. Gibbons.
You will identify this as exhibit A.
That's fine. All right, is everybody satisfied? Bring this matter to a vote, whether the zoning inspector made an error or not?
Oh, you're gonna do it now? Run it on the record?
Why not?
Sure.
Let's see what
What do you need?
Here.
The agenda?
Unless you need, will I ask for a continuance?
I would ask for, can we ask for a continuance to speak to Ms. Mara? Or Mr. Mara? Is that within our purview here?
I don't think you can require her to.
I'm not requiring, I'm asking you, if can we ask for a
You
continuance.
wanted to give them the
then?
opportunity, and if they wanted to take advantage of that, but you can't require her to be here.
Okay.
No, it's just,
We're
Okay.
here to discuss his
whether we had a zoning inspector
interpretation
error.
of how
That's all
it's,
we're gonna do.
how it's
Right.
written.
That's what we're
Okay,
gonna
we
decide
have a
right now.
motion to grant, are we ready for the motion?
Yeah.
To grant BZA 1912 ZI an appeal alleging error by the zoning inspector in his determination of an accessory use to a main use, single-family dwelling located at 11365 Normandy Lane, Auburn Township, Ohio 44023 in an R2 zoning district. This accessory use, a bed and breakfast, hotel motel, is not a listed use, therefore it is not permitted in an R2 zoning district. Prohibited uses 4.03C, Any use not specifically listed shall not be permitted. Can we have someone making that motion?
I'll make the
Lou?
motion.
I'll second.
Second. Mr. Stewart?
No.
Mr. Tomsick?
No.
Mr. Brockman?
No.
Mr. Gibbons?
No.
Mr. Hogan?
No.
Motion denied.
Can I vote against it?
Nice try.
Okay, the minutes from this will be approved at our meeting on April sixth. The appeal period is
Oh, I'm
30
okay.
days after the minutes are approved. Next meeting is April sixth of August, what did I say?
April.
Oh,
Send me the
April,
agreement.
August, they both.
No
days.
rush. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure meeting you.